Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. I will ride with this group. Seriously, man. Please. And away we go.
And a happy Thorsday to all who celebrate. He is Thor Nystrom from Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com, which is funny because it's like fantasy guy, fantasy godfather, Matthew Berry, and it's FantasyLife.com. But you are the foremost draft expert at Fantasy Life. You also have a background and create content in betting markets and also fantasy. So Thor kind of does it all. But lately, he has been the #1 JJ McCarthy propagandist going back about 2 years. So we're excited to get your thoughts on some things here, and also a development in the Ross Tucker saga to get to here, boys. But first, a shout out to Federated Mutual Insurance Company. So Federated, I had a chance a couple days ago. I drove down and spent half a day at the Federated headquarters in Owatonna, Minnesota, which is where they've been based for decades and decades. But they now have a footprint and representation in all 50 states. So if you're a business owner, Federated Insurance, and by the way, if you're a next generation business owner too, I want to emphasize, you're taking over your family's company, you are a younger business owner, and you are looking for just some help putting together a game plan to stay focused on safety and preventing claims, Federated Insurance and federatedinsurance.com can be the place that helps you. At Federated Mutual Insurance Company, it's our business to protect yours. Thor, how are we doing today?
We're doing great. Or maybe you're a young quarterback. You're taking over the starting job of an organization that hasn't won a Super Bowl before, and maybe
And maybe you need some offensive line upgrades and some insurance.
Yeah.
Oh wait, they got you that.
You got all that. You got everything you need.
All the moving this offseason is we'll get into it other way. They moving all the new furniture, and now we got an upgrade of apartment. But I'm doing good, boys. Good to be with you. Excited to talk about some of this stuff today.
And Thorsky, 1 week away from, in fact, less than a week away right now from the 3-day mandatory minicamp at which careers are made, at which training camp storylines begin. Do not sleep on next week in the National Football League, and especially in Egan for your guy, JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, you know the music video for Stan where he's like writing in the notebook? I don't want like your vibe to be Stan, but that's what I want you with Judd's camp notes. I want you up in that press box in Egan. Just
bleached hair, Judd with the bleached hair.
Oh, there's no press box. No. Do not. I do not sit in an air-conditioned press box, my man. I stand on a berm. I stand on a hill, copiously taking notes. And let me just say that there will be an office supply trip, perhaps today, to restock on the reporters' notebooks. Because Sports Dad, as you can see, run a little short here. It's not real. I got to get some more notebooks.
That notebook, what does that last? A practice and a half? I mean, with all the notes and observations you come up with.
It's had a lot of pages torn out. So, no, each one lasts probably 3 practices or so.
You fill the pages with your thoughts and then you tear out those pages and
lots of times I tear out
lay them out.
Yep, exactly right.
Like
I just get tired of it.
So you storyboard your Judd's camp notes on like a coffee table?
I hope I do, yeah. This is serious stuff.
Hey, Judd, speaking of serious, with that notebook, I see you went with the smaller one, and sometimes we see that with reporters. Why not the bigger yellow pad?
Oh, that's a great question because I'm standing on I've got one here. I love the legal pad, but when I'm standing on the berm, binoculars, the possibility, phone, right? I got my phone. And
you don't want to have it tucked under your... I feel
you.
Okay.
And I can stick that in my pocket. And remember, too, I am multidimensional. I might be old, but I'm multidimensional, Thorsday. So I am taking video and snapping pictures of number 9 as well. So I need to be malleable.
Sure.
Multiple dimensional.
Especially when Thor is texting Judd in the wee hours of the night.
Pookie.
Hey, are you going to be at practice tomorrow? Can you send me a few videos of Pookie? That'd be
Have you
great.
seen Pookie?
Yeah.
Who's seen Pookie?
I got my photos, my video, so it was good.
I sent them right to you, didn't I?
You did.
Hey,
I appreciate that.
there's a juicy, recklessly speculative thing that we're going to get to a little later in the show, but we touched on this earlier in the week. I want to bring it to Thor and get his thoughts from from just kind of a scouting perspective, as a guy who has combed through draft prospects for years and years and years. And I'm getting the summation here courtesy of Will Raggets. I think Jubb was there for this, but Harrison Phillips compared JJ McCarthy's growth and energy to when he was around in Buffalo, a young Josh Allen, and saw Josh Allen coming into his own as a quarterback. Now, listen, everything's rosy during OTA practices, and everything's great, and everyone's in the best shape of their life, and everyone has a chance to win the Super Bowl. So there's a grain of salt here with the tone of optimism for any of these conversations in June. But Harrison Phillips has been around a long time. He didn't have to compare J.J. McCarthy to Josh Allen. He chose to. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that comparison of J.J. McCarthy to a young Josh Allen.
I think in general, it's been pretty fascinating. Everyone who comes out and says stuff publicly about JJ, current teammates, former teammates, Cam Bynum was waxing poetic about him recently with Kay Adams. It's all effusive praise, effusive over-the-top praise, whether it's talking about him as a person, whether it's talking about him on the field, whether, like in this case, you're talking about his growth and you're evoking it to one of the great quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and a guy who had just a wild progression, from early on. Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming, he had some things he had to work on, and he wildly improved, up through the second season. Then he ended up taking off. But it's pretty fascinating that Harrison Phillips is drawing parallels between McCarthy and Josh Allen.
Accuracy-wise, I feel like Josh Allen had a lot of issues coming out of Wyoming with just accuracy, and felt like he spent a year or two in the NFL honing it, right?
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that, from a pure scouting perspective, Allen, JJ's a plus athlete, but Allen a plus athlete, but McCarthy maybe more accurate? Or how would you dive deeper on the scouting comparison?
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, Allen was all-time projectable projectable quarterback prospect, but you had that bridge to get over of, if we don't fix the accuracy, it doesn't matter how big and strong and athletic and how far he can throw the ball, right? JJ, you can argue that the ceiling isn't quite as high, but the floor is way, way higher coming in. Right? I mean, the guy completed over 70% of his passes against the nation's hardest schedule in 2023 when he won a national title as a 20-year-old for the sitting NFL head coach. We don't need to jump over a bridge here or make a logical leap to project JJ McCarthy to NFL success. The game just translates. But, we were talking about some of the mechanical tweaks with JJ, some of the smaller type things with Josh Allen. You had to do a whole overhaul when he came into the NFL. And obviously he got there pretty quick. It took him the year and a half. And then you had an NFL star. With JJ, it's these small tweaks. But it seems like his teammates are very impressed with his ability to work through that, even through injury season. We have seen progression with that.
And I think the quantifiable thing, too, is because he is yet to play a regular season down. But I think what we can talk about, too, is what guys' interpretation of him as a person. And, I mean, this is a guy who got hurt, and 2 days after he gets hurt, goes to Harrison bleeping Phillips and says, I want to sit down with the defense once a week to learn more. In fact, in the same press conference a couple days ago, Phil, that you're talking about, he said that JJ, still picks his brain on things to ask about what he sees from opponents defensively, because he knows that Phillips can sort of explain it to him. So, let's take away the football thing for a second, and let's just go with what this kid has done in the locker room as far as maturation and as far as trying to learn. And I think that's where guys, because, I mean, these guys, a lot of them have been around for a long time, and they can sniff BS out. They know bull dong when they hear it, right? And when you're I want to sit down with the defensive guys once a week to find out more, that's oh, hold on a second. You're how old? And you're asking that? So, I do think that there's a natural thing, and this is the unquantifiable it factor that some people have and some people don't have, and I don't believe that it can be made up, where I buy completely that a lot of these guys are very impressed by McCarthy's approach, and that is a good starting point when the dude has not played it down yet.
Yeah, it sure is. And he, you come in, you're the top 10 pick at the quarterback position. It's kind of a weird sort of line that you have to walk initially, because you're supposed to be proving your leadership skills, seeing as though by definition you have just become the face of the franchise, while sort of demurring and deferring and being that sponge that you talked about, right? It's like, I'm going to learn. I don't know anything. I'm just the kid, learning. But then on the other hand, follow me. And it seems like JJ sort of is perfectly, over the past calendar year, sort of perfectly walked that line where he is both that sponge, but also showing the leadership qualities. It seems like all of his teammates want to run through a wall for him already.
Sorry, broadcast professional here. There's an on button to these.
Come on, Phil. It's not that hard. I never do that.
Oh man. I think I'm very excited for more Judd's camp notes next week, because this is all just a fascinating process, watching JJ McCarthy turn into potentially the leader of this franchise. But I would like to get to step 2 of this conversation.
Reckless speculation.
Which is the insurance policy behind JJ McCarthy that we've been kind of wringing our hands over the last few months. First, it was not even really Sam Darnold, because that was never necessarily realistic. And if he would have come back, it would have been as a starter, most likely. But Daniel Jones turned down the opportunity to be the backup. At least we on this show speculated on a bunch of different backups, from Joe Flacco all the way to Ryan Tannehill, who hasn't played for a couple years. But so they settled on Sam Howell, and there's still some questions. That dude takes a ton of sacks, throws a ton of interceptions. We'll have a better feel probably once you get 2-3 weeks into training camp whether he is a viable QB2. But Dan Graziano from ESPN.com, in an article from this morning, he puts together this interesting little it's not a report, but when guys like this put together anything that is like rooted in opinion or speculation, usually there is some level of intel that they're getting. And he suggests that the Vikings trade a 2026 5th-round pick and a 2027 7th-round pick and maybe some cash considerations to the Atlanta Falcons for Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins? Speculation.
What are your guys' thoughts on this?
It's like, I see where he's going with it. It's interesting. You have the prior relationship there. We'll see with Sam Howell, in camp, but presumably Kirk Cousins would be the upgrade over him as a QB2. Would be a lot of things to work through there. Kirk Cousins is unhappy being the backup to a top 10 rookie quarterback from last draft process in Atlanta, but now he's just the terrible Terry signs off on that trade, and all of a sudden Kirk's like, okay, now I'm cool with it. That we'd have to see. But you would get the QB2 upgrade. The trade packages that people have tossed out for Kirk Cousins have been too rich throughout. We were talking about this in the spring when people were tossing this out, and like terrible Terry wanted teams to take most of that contract off of him and give him a mid-round draft pick. It's like, Terry, that's not going to happen. Surrendering Howell, to me, would be pretty dang close to sufficient enough. If you're also going to cover $8 to $10 million of the contract this coming season, that's not an asset that's worth much anymore, Kirk Cousins. But I'd be sort of curious about that. But I'd be okay with it.
I've gone so back and forth on this stuff because yes, when I watch Howell's arm, I'm like, ugh, if something happens to McCarthy, this is going to be, because where I'm really torn here is this. I don't think McCarthy's going to lose the job, but people get hurt. So you have to be prepared. And the issue is this team is so primed to win right now that it's going to be a big disappointment if that does not happen. So if something does happen to JJ, I've been really torn. But where I'm torn with Kirk is, and we talked about this originally, I think 2 months ago. If JJ struggles at all and you have Kirk Cousins back there as his backup, what is the oh my God, you've got Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins can play, which I don't
think there's a groundswell for that.
I'm just throwing it out there that I have a little bit of concern. I hope you're right, but I have a bit of concern. The other thing though is I would for sure, if I made the trade, still want Atlanta to eat some of the salary.
Yeah.
So in my trading card world with my sports card collections that I do, there's a line of buy yesterday's buy today's cards at yesterday's prices. That's what it is. Buy today's cards at
Like
yesterday's prices. If you give the Falcons the 5th and the 6th round pick right now for Kirk Cousins, I can get down on that. What happens, though, in training camp if JJ McCarthy does suffer another injury? That price for Kirk Cousins shoots up.
Because you're more
It
desperate.
goes up because you have desperation now. Just like it wouldn't be the Sam Bradford situation, but you can make a case that it's pretty parallel to that, and that price would go up. If today's price for Kirk Cousins is a 5th and 6th round pick, I think I pull that trigger.
I have it's a fun idea, and generally I feel like I am much more open to this than Judd has been over the past few months, because part of my logic is this roster is really, really good, and if JJ gets hurt or something, like any quarterback could get hurt.
Yep.
I think you owe it to that roster and the coaches and even the fans to try and win a bunch of games still and try and just push this thing as far as you can. Some of the best seasons in Vikings history have happened when the starting quarterback gets hurt in the first couple weeks. 1998, 2017, and they had a viable backup come in and take a really good roster to the NFC Championship game. Is that person on the roster right now behind JJ McCarthy? I think Sam Howell can be, but I'm curious to see what it looks like again once we get like second, third week into August. The other wild card here is Kirk has a full no trade clause. He gets to fully dictate all of this. So he could just say no to anything and play hardball and make the Falcons cut him, which I think vindictive Kirk would love to do that. Listen, you guys screwed me when you drafted Penix, and you screwed me again when you benched me for Penix. I'm going to literally veto any possible trade that you can come up with because it doesn't benefit me at all. My paychecks are going to be the same. The bonuses are already paid out. So that's kind of where I'm at is this team. Some people might say, well, if McCarthy gets hurt, then you should just tank. This team is not bad enough to tank. Just like they weren't bad enough to tank fully in 2023, unless they would have traded Danielle Hunter at the deadline, in which case maybe they...
The Wilfs did not approve these signings for the word tank to cross these ears, these cans in 2025. So absolutely not. The other thing with Kirk is...
planning ahead here.
I wonder if Kirk, Thorsky, I think it makes a lot of sense, and Phil might be exactly right. Vindictive Kirk is a thing. But, the team that continues to hang out there to me is Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like if I'm Kirk, reuniting with O'Connell as a backup wouldn't end my world because he feels like the Falcons lied to him. But that Pittsburgh job, and Aaron hasn't signed yet, and I'm not so sure he's going to. So, like, if you're Kirk, I think your first choice is probably Pittsburgh because I think you have a very legitimate chance to step in and be QB1 the second that a trade and or signing is consummated.
Terrible Terry would never lie. He'd never deceive. But no, I'm with you. I'm with you with Pittsburgh and that's sort of the hand that they have, the leverage that they have in the Aaron Rodgers thing, right? Is we have a potential viable backup option in the Kirk Cousins deal. I think the one that makes the most sense. Now this is dependent on Aaron Rodgers wanting to play, outdoors with a non-Super Bowl contender with the Steelers. But if he signed there, and then I think Cousins to the Browns has always made the most sense to me. I know the Browns have a million quarterbacks right now, but none of them are good at present. You could trade Kenny Pickett, that might be enough, right? Kenny Pickett in a 6th round, 7th round pick. You could trade 2 of the quarterbacks. You got to get rid of one of them, right? I'm not sure if you're sending back Shadir Sanders there, but you have 4 quarterbacks on that roster, not including Deshaun Watson. Kirk Cousins has the pre-existing relationship with Kevin Stefanski. That's the one that makes the most sense to me.
I love it. The Kenny Pickett thing is. I'd like to know what Kevin O'Connell's evaluation of Kenny Pickett is. Yeah. Does he qualify for quarterback rehabilitation university? Would Sam Howell have qualified before they lowered their standards after whiffing on Daniel Jones and maybe some other guys? I don't really know. Are any of the other 2 quarterbacks on the roster, like could Max Brosmer at some point become QB3 over Brett Rippon? I just feel like there's a lot of questions to be answered here over the next 2 months in that room. It's a much different room than the end of last season. You had all these former like top 10 draft picks hanging around. And now you got a bunch of question marks behind earmuffs Thor, a question mark in that like JJ's never played a football game and he's coming off an injury and we have to see it. There is a world in which like it doesn't start super smoothly and you might have to navigate that. Mm-hmm. I know you want to push back aggressively at me for that comment. Thor, you're welcome to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know my opinion on that, and I also think the QB2 thing to me was kind of overblown this offseason because if McCarthy gets injured, I'm not going to toss the tank word out, but if McCarthy gets injured, the season is over either way. I don't really care who the QB2 is. So I thought that, you know, when you were going through, you're signing, you know, 2 starters on the interior defensive line, you signed 2 starters interior offensive line, and then people kept being like, what about the QB2? What about the QB? It's like, nah, maybe let's fill the starting lineup first, you know, like, and that if we have leftover stuff, then maybe, but yeah, that's my take.
If I may make my case for the QB2 to apologist, defenders, concerned, whatever the phrase or word is, here's why I think it's important. Here's why I think it's important.
With due respect.
I think this is why. So you go back to 2023, okay? Team gets off to a bad start, but then it comes back, stops fumbling as much. Kirk's playing really well at the time. And you, in the game that Kirk got hurt in against the Packers at Lambeau, you get to 500 in that game, and things look bright, and Kirk gets hurt. And now you really don't have, Mullins was hurt. He was also not the answer, but he was hurt. And so now you're playing for essentially the rest of the season, musical backup QB. And I think a lot of us sort of gave him a pass. We're like, oh, that's too bad, Kirk, but, you know, Kirk was hurt. And then I always refer to this. If you go back to the end of the season, when Mark Wilf was asked about this, he's basically like, that's not an excuse. Like, we had a good roster. That's not an excuse. And so I'm basing what they're doing a little bit more on that. Because, again, you can say the season's done if McCarthy gets hurt, but the reality is the ownership of this team approved major signings, like among the most in the entire league in free agency, which is why I think if you trot out little Sam Howell and the ball's going through the air like a butterfly, they're going to be like, what's this? And the one thing is, I mean, McCarthy did miss an entire season because he got hurt. So you have to have a backup plan. And right now, just from what I've seen and observed, I don't know that backup plan is sufficient yet. Now, could it be addressed in training camp? Absolutely. But this is what I'm basing my QB2 potential angst on, is I think there's pressure. We can all say, well, JJ got hurt, too bad. But if the Wilfs say, no, it's not an excuse. Why didn't you have a better backup QB? Which is why they pressed on, I think, really hard on Daniel Jones, because I think they did like him. So, Thor, that's why I think that there is a conversation here that is important internally about what they do if McCarthy goes down.
Yeah, and if they had their druthers, obviously, we talked about at the time, you know, you signed Daniel Jones, whatever, with November, whenever that was, and the idea was to roll it forward and he would be the QB2 mentor this season. But the opportunity for Daniel Jones to compete for a starting job immediately, a far more viable situation there in Indianapolis, at least as far as a path to an immediate week 1 starting job. He decided to take it. So, yeah, I mean, you know, after that, you know, the Vikings were doing their other stuff in the offseason, and then we get back to the QB2 thing. I think the Howell idea is fine. And if nothing else, you have here, 2 months for the NFL's best quarterback whisperer evaluator fella to see him up close. If O'Connell is skittish at all about Sam Howell, like in the break glass in case of emergency, like I'm not going to be able to trust him this year if JJ gets nicked up at all, then yeah, I think there's going to be these possibilities open. We talk about the Cousins one. There's other quarterbacks out there as well. I think that there's different things that you could do to maneuver if you had to, but you know, with some of these options that are out there. But I'm provisionally fine with Sam Howell heading into the summer at least.
Yeah. You know, another thing from Vikings practice this week, Dante Culpepper showed up.
In his jean shorts.
His jean shorts, his little T-shirt, getting his roll on, meeting JJ McCarthy, and it had me for sure kind of reminiscing about those early 2000s Vikings, but also the parallels that we've alluded to since JJ was drafted. I mean, they were both 10th overall pick, or Daunte was 11? Were they both 10th
11.
overall? 11.
11.
Yeah, because
From
JJ was
Washington.
the first
Was the
top
first.
10 pick. Yeah.
Yeah, Dante was the highest before that. Yep.
But the Vikings were slotted 11th, and they move up to 10. So, like, some parallels in terms of where those guys were drafted. Daunte wasn't hurt in 1999, but he sat his entire full rookie season, and JJ also sat. And while we sit here for the last 10 minutes having this conversation about hedging against the idea, like, what if something happens to McCarthy? What's your hedge? Well, Daunte did not have any issues in his first official season as a starter. I just pulled up that 2000 season to remember the flow of they started 7-0. Offense was on fire the entire year. They finished, it wasn't quite the 98 offense, but it was a top 5 scoring offense with kind of a rickety defense. You know, they were scoring, they were 5th out of 31 teams in scoring average. They started 7-0 and 11-2 before the wheels kind of came off in mid-December. They actually lost their last 3 games of the regular season, but they bounced back. They smoked the Saints in the first round of the playoffs, and then the second round because they got the bye, and then the NFC Championship game. But Dante Culpepper as a first-year starter with great offensive infrastructure, great offensive-minded head coach, best receiver in the league, sound familiar, Randy Moss and Justin Jefferson, kind of an aging but still good Chris Carter, and a really good high-end running back in Robert Smith. Okay, lean on all those weapons. He led the league in touchdown passes, Thor, touchdown percentage, so percentage of attempts that turned into touchdowns, and had a passer rating just under 100. So, like, if that's the parallel on the high end of this, then that would be incredible 25 years later.
1000%. That was a really cool moment, seeing Culpepper out there. I had the biggest smile on my face, his jean shorts and his t-shirt. And Dante Culpepper is one of the most underappreciated Vikings of my lifetime, in my opinion. Like, he gets slept on and forgotten a little bit when we start talking about the modern NFL or the modern Viking greats. And he had like the sliding doors thing, right, with the knee injury. We're looking at a totally destructive career, a destructive injury that took away what was a tremendous career at the time. I was looking back at, Phil, while you were talking, at the 99 draft. What a wild start to that thing, where you had Tim Couch go 1 and Achilles Smith 3. Here's the players drafted around them. Donovan McNabb was in between at number 2. Edgerrin James, Ricky Williams, Torrey Holt, Champ Bailey, and then you had Dante Culpepper coming 3-4 picks later. But then Cade McNown goes right after Dante Culpepper. It's like, what's that game, Minecraft, where you're clicking, and then all of a sudden you hit the mine? Like, we had a couple mines up there in the top 12, but man, Culpepper, what a tremendous player, and just too bad that he got injured. But yeah, very cool. He's back and meeting the new Dante Culpepper, the new face of the franchise.
And that was a great pick too, because if you go back to that draft, you're coming off 98.
Yeah.
Cunningham at that point was like, oh my God, you've got a second life here. You're going to be the quarterback.
It was a ballsy pick, Judd, in the moment.
And they got Jeff George. But here's where it was really ballsy. The guy that they passed on, and he went 5 picks after, 16th to the Titans, was Javon Curse.
Yeah.
Everybody thought the freak was coming here.
Yeah.
So everyone's like, oh my God, you're going to solve this problem. You're going to have this done. And he turned into a great player. But like, to Phil's point, that's the thing is, I think one of the things from that period, the 90s and 2000, and that's about it. But I think one of the things that's really slept on, Denny Green.
Yeah.
He might have been a little bit of an odd character. He definitely could be recalcitrant at times. But Denny Green,
recalcitrant.
Great use of recalcitrant.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But Denny Green, like as far as the vision offensively went, and the execution was really damn good. And so like that pick was like, what are you doing? Why are you taking a quarterback? Sure enough, in Detroit in 99, Cunningham flames out. Jeff George takes over, but then that sets up Culpepper to become the quarterback in 2000. And yes, 2005, the big question is always going to be, what if Dante hadn't got hurt? Because his knee literally blew up.
But yeah. I was looking through the transactions with him. Did the Vikings acquire that pick because they traded Brad Johnson?
Washington, yes.
Yeah.
They traded Brad Johnson to Washington. Wow. And then the best part of that story at the end of the day was In Childress' first game as the coach, it was a Monday night game, September 11th, 2006. Brad Johnson, starting at quarterback for the Vikings, beat Washington in Washington. And post-game, he had saved his jersey from the then Redskins. At his locker, he puts the jersey on to take a victory lap that he had beat his team that traded him.
Wow, the vindictiveness.
Brad was a really good guy, sneaky vindictive.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, and Dante Culpepper is involved with some crazy sliding doors moments. I mean, outside with other organizations. Nick Saban, his whole legacy, the way we remember both the NFL and college football changes if Dante Culpepper's knee healed better, essentially, right? Like, because you had Miami at that time. It was the Drew Brees thing.
Correct.
And then they instead decided to trade for Culpepper. Culpepper's knee never healing is the reason that Nick Saban then retires, goes back to college. You have just all these sliding door things. And then obviously Saban goes back to Alabama, who had been this dormant monster for a few years, and he wakes him up again, turns him back into a colossus. And then you had, the Saints end up with Drew Brees, and obviously that went really well and everything like that. But yeah, kind of crazy. Dante Culpepper was in the middle of some of that stuff. By the way, the trade for Brad Johnson, you get the first pick, which I guess was used on Culpepper. The third round pick, I guess it was subsequently traded. 73rd overall they acquired in that. That ended up being Joey Porter. Joey Porter's
Oh,
senior.
man.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow,
dude.
I didn't know that.
All these sliding doors.
Sliding doors.
everywhere.
It's all connected.
That's ridiculous.
And now his son's in, and we're going to see him in Ireland on September 28th, baby. We'll see you there, Porters.
That's right.
Everything coming full circle. Dante, if you want to come, we'll see you there too.
By the way, recalcitrant, having an obstinately uncooperative attitude toward authority or discipline when used as an adjective, or when used as a noun, a person with an obstinately uncooperative attitude. To be a person could be a recalcitrant, or you could have a recalcitrant viewpoint on things or personality.
Correct.
A class of recalcitrant 15-year-olds is the fragment used here on dictionary.com.
Okay.
Just a tremendous use of recalcitrant by Judd today.
Thank you very much.
That was
always
that
like
was
to drop
fabulous.
that in once in a while. Sprinkle it in.
So if you've been a recalcitrant toward your HVAC system, who can you call that can maybe help solve these problems, John?
Well, first of all, drop the attitude. Sports Dad here telling you to drop
I don't
that
need air conditioning.
attitude and call my good friends at MSP Plumbing, Heating and Air, who are absolutely outstanding. If the AC, so it's getting warm. So if the AC, let's say it's not even on the fritz completely, it's struggling though. It's showing signs of wear. So you need a checkup. How about this, guys? $49 an AC tune-up. That is a absolute no-brainer decision. Gives you a peace of mind. Repairs, installs, reliable service. That's what MSP is all about. Also ask about their Total Comfort Club membership too, and know that your system will be taken care of all year round. 651-615-4292. Call MSP.com. Call MSP.com. Don't be recalcitrant. Make sure your house is comfortable. That's what your family wants.
Yes, you can take that to the bank. The North American Banking Company is where you can take that. North American Banking Company, Minnesota-based since 1998. So whether you are buying a home, tackling a renovation, financing a car, setting up a new business, or just looking for a better checking and savings account experience, North American Banking Company will give you peace of mind about where you bank, personal relationships, cutting-edge online tools. I love that North American Banking Company is so invested in the Twin Cities with their 6 metro locations. They are one of us, so to speak, and you can find out more information at nabankco.com/Mackey. That's nabankco.com/Mackey. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. So, hey, real quick here, Thor. We have, courtesy of who pumped these things out? I think it was DraftKings a couple weeks ago. 17 Vikings games on the schedule, and they have opening lines for all 17.
Let's hear.
The Vikings are, how many, just off the top of your heads, maybe you guys have already seen this, but how many of the 17 games do you think they're favored in right now?
It's correlative to the over-under, right? It's got to be The market's too low on the Vikings, but it's got to be either 8 or 9, I would assume.
Judd, you have a guess?
I'm going to say it's less than I think. So yeah, I'll go with 9.
I'm gonna say 6.
Dex is the closest. It's 7. They're only favored in 7 games. Their favorite. I'll rattle these off here. I'll go through these and you stop me when you're like, wait a second. Okay. Week 1 at Bears. Bears 1.5 favorites.
Yeah.
It's on the road.
Yeah.
The Bears are going to be great. I'm hearing the Bears are going to the Super Bowl. We might as well skip the season.
They're literally practicing their huddles right now.
Yeah.
So let's
new coaching. They're practicing coming out of the huddle. Do you know what that means?
I will say cheap plug O-line committee. I brought that up to Jeremiah and Alex yesterday, kind of in a mocking tone, and they were like, no, it's actually like a really important thing that they're going through this right now. Because there's a lot of times if they're watching the Bears with these chaotic coaching staffs, and it's very obvious that they called a protection one way, but they didn't flip the receiver formation the other way, and they're just lined up wrong. So maybe it's good that the Bears are practicing how to spit the play out, ready, break, and line up the correct way.
It just shows where they are.
There.
Like that's the thing is the Vikings, they know how to huddle.
And they're the better team with the better coaching staff, and they're better dang near every position you look at on the field. The market, as always, is too high on the Bears, and as is generally the case, it's too low on the Vikings heading into the season. I'll be betting the Vikings in that game. I don't need the points.
I'm with Thor on that.
I don't disagree. I'm just not surprised by the line.
Yeah.
Vikings they're then favorites in 4 consecutive games after that. 4.5 point home favorites against the Falcons, 1.5 favorites at home against the Bengals, and then the European games, they are favored by 1.5 over the Steelers and by a touchdown over the Browns.
Oh, wow.
That touchdown's a little aggressive in a foreign environment. Sometimes those games get weird.
It does kind of speak to, remember the thing we were talking about how I thought the Vikings had a big competitive advantage in that game because you're staying in Europe. I'm curious, Phil, on there, does it say what that opened as? Do you see like the current line, open line? See if it changed at all?
And by the way, these are from like 2 weeks ago, so it might be different. I think these were the opening lines, and I don't know where it's at right now.
Yeah, it seems like, well, if it was open that way, that's the books being aggressive and maybe trying to encourage, money the other way. Incentivizing that's pretty bullish on the Vikings. But yeah, I think the rest of those lines more or less makes sense.
And then, back bye week, and then back on the underdog trail here. Eagles at home, 3-point underdogs.
Ooh.
At Chargers Thursday night, 3-point underdogs.
That's going to be my favorite one because it's JJ against Harbaugh. It's like, he's facing his father.
Yeah. Well, he's facing his stepfather. I think you are acknowledged as his actual
JJ,
biological
I am your father.
His football father.
Yeah.
Lions at Detroit, 4.5 point underdogs in that one.
At Detroit?
Yep.
Okay.
And then home against the Ravens, 3.5 point underdogs at home against the Ravens. The 3.5, man. I'll take those points.
The Ravens and Eagles lines, I guess I can see why the Vikings are dogs in those games. I think they're pretty aggressive though. Like they're flipping that. So if the ordinary rule of thumb is just by being at home, you're going to start off with what, Thor, like a 3-point favorite, and then we'll adjust from there. They're flipping that by what? If I'm right on that,
be like a touchdown, right? Yeah.
6 point. I think that is. I would go 1.5.
Are the Ravens and Eagles a touchdown better than the Vikings?
I don't think so.
Not preseason. No, I mean I don't. Yeah, like once the season starts, we all could change our opinion. But as we sit here in June, no. I mean, I would go at most on those if I was to favor the Eagles and the Ravens. I'd go 1.5.
Another thing to consider with those two teams specifically, and I get that the running backs in question here are cyborgs, like generational cyborgs in Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, especially Derrick Henry, by the way, who just seems like impervious to injury. Yeah, those guys are getting older, and both of those guys had crazy workloads and productions last year. And so there's a gamble there, and both those guys got contracts and stuff. There's a gamble that those guys can kind of buck the trend of super high usage, high productivity running backs not suffering some sort of a setback or an injury the following season. I would probably fade those two running backs' performances compared to last year. Something to consider. Both teams on the Vikings schedule.
Who do you guys think Jim Harbaugh would be more loyal to? His son JJ or his brother John? Because he could give some advanced scouting notes there 2 weeks before the Ravens game.
Yeah, I think
maybe look out for this on defense, JJ. Maybe
he's definitely competitive with his brother. I think he'd love to see JJ McCarthy.
Yeah,
stick it to his brother.
And then what if the Vikings steal a win from that? Obviously, the Ravens are a top contender in the AFC, and Jim hopes his team is a top contender in the AFC. Maybe you give JJ a little bit of intel.
I was going to say that's more. Yes, I agree with that. Why would you help your brother who coaches in your conference?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. You're on to something.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Bears at home, 2.5-point favorites, Vikings.
They're only 2.5-point favorite at home against the Bears.
Thor.
What a freaking joke.
The Bears,
so they're saying the Bears are better on a neutral?
Yeah.
Take off the 3. Get out of here. What a joke.
Thor, the Bears are people are all over the Bears. I'm not joking about this.
The Bears.
Like they're talking about, I told Phil and Dex on Get Up yesterday, they did a whole segment on the division that was titled "The Lions, Packers, and Bears, oh my," and completely ignored the Vikings. They think the Bears are better.
They do this every single year, and there's some crazy stat. Okay, actually, I found it good. The Bears have gone under their preseason win total in 11 of the past 12 years. Every single summer, we could have this exact same conversation because the Bears are always back. No, now this time. No, I know I said it last year, but now it's this time, right? Oh, now they have a new coaching staff. They ejected the old ones, and you have the second-year quarterback that couldn't figure out the last system. You had all those issues. You remade the whole offensive line. But no, now is the year. This will be the year. Get out of here. The Vikings are underdogs at home to the Chicago Bears. What a joke. I might have to bet that one when we get off this episode. That's just disrespectful.
You might say, Thor, that the Bears are who we thought they were the last 12 years.
Yeah, that's right. And we didn't let them off the hook. You want to go broke, bet the Bears over in the win total every summer. If you want to go broke. If you want to go broke, too, bet against JJ McCarthy, as people have found out in the past.
I love how this is blending like two just personal – it's Bears and McCarthy all rolled into one disrespectful number, this -2.5. And then, at Packers, +3.5. At Seahawks, +1.5. So you're underdogs in these games. Home underdog against the Commanders, 1.5.
What?
People are a little aggressive on the Commanders. Awesome season, weak schedule last year. And is it likely that the league catches up a little bit in year 2 to Jaden Daniels and finds some ways to throw some stuff at him that he didn't see as a rookie? So that's one I'd probably look at and circle. And I'll give you the last 4 here. At Cowboys, 1.5 favorites. At Giants, 2.5-point favorites. That's interesting.
Wait, they say that they're saying the Cowboys are only 1 point worse than the Giants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
And then Lions at home, you'd be a 2.5-point underdog, and Packers at home, 1.5 underdog.
Well, those ones make sense because the Vikings will be resting all their starters those games. So,
are they saying then that the Packers are 4.5 points, 3.5 to 4.5 points better than? So wait, at Green Bay it's a 3.5 underdog, but home it's a 1.5 underdog.
I wonder if there's some weird stuff with those last couple ones.
Week 18, yeah,
like the idea of if one of these teams is resting the starter, or
so they condense the advantage that you would be okay.
I think that could be
Give me the Commanders game. Give me that Commanders game. You're telling me I'd be surprised if that was a pick'em. That should be Vikings 1.5-point favorites at the very least, in my opinion.
I agree with that. I would also like to go on after probably and I'll do a money line parlay. I'm gonna parlay the Vikings both their games against the Bears and just parlay the money line together. JJ McCarthy grew up in the shadow of frickin' Soldier Field, and then they took Caleb Williams over, and they never even considered JJ. And now in his first NFL start, you get to go to Soldier Field. And you have the better team, you have the better coaching staff with you. I like the Vikings in that one. And then later in the season, you get them at home. JJ McCarthy, we know, is big on revenge. If anyone out there, if you haven't seen the thing where the Viking staff, they handed JJ a clock, an Ohio State clock to sign for Donovan Jackson, the first round pick guard from Ohio State. JJ McCarthy, like it was like an episode of The Office where he broke character and looked at the camera and kind of did a sly grin. Then he started signing it and they handed it to Donovan Jackson. He signed it 4-0, JJ McCarthy. Because Michigan has not lost to Ohio State since JJ McCarthy signed. Prior to that, Michigan couldn't beat Ohio State. Now they can't lose to him. But yeah, that is a guy. The revenge factor is very real, and his hometown Chicago Bears passing on him. I can't wait to see that opener in Chicago. JJ returning home with his new squad. I think he's going to put on a show.
Oh, there's one more on here, by the way. It looks like it's -500 for JJ's unborn child to be named Thor.
Oh, that'd be great.
Note. So maybe you can just play. You could parlay the 2 Bears games with that one and fill out your ticket that way.
Yeah, the next great quarterback prospect at Cretin-Durham Hall. Although it's people are already fighting over the high school that he's going to start at as the quarterback. I saw some other ideas of this one. I'm not great with the high schools around the area, but yeah, it's kind of fun.
Private school for sure.
Yeah, probably.
Okay, because I was going to say he probably lives in or will in Egan, perhaps.
Although, now that I think
he might be a western suburb guy by then too.
It's like the past is the best indicator of the future. I was talking about this yesterday about the Manning and Arch Manning and the thing about the first overall pick next year. I think there's more factors there than people are considering. But JJ stayed home at his high school, Nazareth Academy in Illinois, until he couldn't. His last year, the state of Illinois canceled the football season. That's when JJ transferred to IMG in Florida, won the national title. No big deal. Before he went to Michigan, turned that thing around. But anyway, the whole point being, maybe you'd have the kid play at just his local high school. Maybe.
I love it. So based on how great JJ McCarthy's career is expected to be, Thor, what is your scouting report on his unborn child? what best tools?
I'm going to wait till he gets to Pop Warner, Bob, before we. Yeah.
Although you guys
should be fair to the kid,
If McCarthy's the quarterback here for 10 to 15 years, don't sleep on his son playing hockey.
Oh, he's going to play hockey for sure.
No, right. But I'm just saying the kid could choose hockey.
He could choose hockey.
Which opens up a lot. Hill Murray, Benilde, Holy Family,
Hermantown.
St. Thomas. No. He's Irish Catholic. So he is going private school. He's going Catholic school. But there would
Cranbrook.
be so he would be a quarterback. He'd be a quarterback. He'd be a hockey player. Probably play baseball too, but I wouldn't be surprised. The kid could pick hockey as a full-time sport eventually too.
Love this. It's great projection.
Yeah. Grows up in Minnesota. Why not? Right?
Yeah. I think we should launch a separate wing of Purple Daily, just a weekly show projecting the career arc of JJ McCarthy's unborn child. Let's make this happen.
That kid from the womb to the field. We got to get him out for practice immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Thor, any final words of wisdom from you before we say goodbye on this Thursday?
Yeah, I got some. I got.
Oh, you're gonna be on. I forgot. You're gonna be on Ross Tucker's podcast.
Oh,
When's that happening?
Yeah, tomorrow morning. I don't know when I don't know when it'll get released, but I'm recording with at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning.
So it might drop tomorrow, but it might sometime over the weekend. It's gonna be Thor and Ross Tucker.
It's gonna be Frost Nixon.
People want you to fight with him too. So anything he says, just start a big brawl.
Yeah, hopefully you can avenge our cowardly reactions to his Vikings negativity from earlier this week.
Yeah,
be the man that we aren't, Thor. Okay.
I might have tuned into that episode. I might have heard some things that Ross said about JJ McCarthy. And as you guys know, when I see JJ McCarthy slander, I just kind of go black, and then all of a sudden I'm responding to it. Like Frank the Tank and Old School when he's debating the Raging Cajun James Carville, but. If Ross Tucker wants to have a conversation about JJ McCarthy, I'll be up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow morning, and I'm excited to talk about JJ McCarthy. I disagree with Ross's assessment, as I said on Twitter. And he wasn't even talking about JJ's game. He was talking about sort of like these ancillary, contextual things around that suggested to him that the Vikings were trepidatious about JJ McCarthy, when I think the signs that we've gotten these neon blaring signs that are indicating the exact opposite, right? I mean, I'll litigate this with Ross tomorrow. Don't worry about it, guys. But you let Sam Darnold go. You just gave him the one, base level, the cheap contract offer that you knew he was going to turn down after you couldn't get the franchise tag thing. And then with Daniel Jones, they gave him a fair offer. He just, like we talked about before, he wanted the better shot to start this coming season. You can't really begrudge him that. Anyway, we'll get into the whole thing tomorrow. Don't worry about it.
Love this. Oh, this turns into a week-long saga here. Ross Tucker versus Vikings fans versus Purple Daily fans versus the three of us for not
It got ugly.
defending the honor of this football team enough. So Thor, hopefully you can do what we were incapable and too scared to do earlier this week.
We were meek.
Anytime someone wants to talk about JJ McCarthy, and I don't care. I'll take on 100 men. I'll be Jon Snow with the sword, with the horse is descending. I don't care.
He is Thor Nystrom, folks, from Matthew Berry's fantasylife.com and also Thor KU on X. You can find him there. And every Thorsday here on Purple Daily. All right, buddy. Enjoy your weekend. And Judd's camp notes are coming down the pike again next week. So we got plenty more. All right, guys. Purple Daily here. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. See ya.